Hi, my name is Heather, and behind me is my friend Bina. We both work for the Okanagan Regional Library, and today we're going to take a look at some online 3D modeling software. It's called TinkerCAD, and it being online is wonderful because you have your files no matter where you are if you have access to an internet browser, and then you also have it being free and high quality. Those two together I think are a great deal. I use TinkerCAD a lot just to either manipulate a pre-existing model or create something brand new. I find it really accessible for someone who's maybe just beginning their journey on 3D modeling. I think you're going to have a good amount of success early on to just kind of help you along that learning journey. And this video is part of our Zoom meeting that we did where we already have created our fairy door. You can use this as your course notes. You can fast forward, pause, go to the part that you just want to review. And if you didn't join us in Zoom, well, welcome today, and you can absolutely use this as a learning tool on its own. So let's get started. All right, so looking at the screen in front of me, this is the TinkerCAD where you log into it. I'm just using my preferred browser and tinkercad.com. In the top right corner is the Join Now if you don't already have an account. And there's three options: educator, students, to join a class, and a personal account. Personal account is what I would suggest creating unless you are going to be sharing this with a class. At the bottom is sign in if you already have an account. One way that you might not realize you already have an account is if you have browsed TinkerCAD, an online resource for a whole bunch of 3D print files that you can download for free. If you've ever signed into there, you might already have an account that works with this, as it's the same parent program. I'm going to sign in with my Google. And let's see if it remembers me. So I'm going to sign in as ORL Lab. So I'm at the Westside Learning Lab in West Kelowna. You can see a bit of our technology maybe around me. There's a sound booth over my left shoulder, and Mina is using our creation station, which is a really high power computer, great for photo editing and animation. All right, so as you can see, we have our fairy door that we had already created, but let's create it again so we can go through it step by step. This blue button, Create New Design, is what we're going to click on. And I'll take a moment to think, and there we have it. This is our work field that will be created every time we create a new design. So this blue work plane, as it's labeled, is a virtual 3D printing bed. So with the idea that this could eventually be 3D printed, this gives you an idea of size. If you have much overhang or if it's too small, it might be too difficult or not be able to be printed. So with my right mouse, my right click, I'm going to click down and hold it, and I can drag this work plane around so I can see it from every angle. And this comes in really handy if you're trying to align things or join them together, just to make sure from every angle they are joined. I one time was making space astronauts, and I accidentally didn't realize that they were holding hands, so they just were best friends up in space. That's just what happened. First thing I like to do is give it a name. TinkerCAD is wonderful that it automatically saves everything for you. You don't have to worry about file save or anything like that, but it gives it a randomly generated name. So if I click on it, I'll be able to give it a new name. So I'm going to call it Fairy Door, and I'm just going to give it a 2.0 because we have already created one. And to my right here, I have just columns of different shapes. You can see that TinkerCAD organizes shapes in different categories. There's text and numbers, all, connectors, and characters. I'm going to stick with basic shapes for today. And what I liken these shapes to is virtual Lego. Like Lego, you can grab your blocks and you can start building. Same here, but the neat thing about this virtual Lego is I can manipulate the size. So a 2x2 in physical Lego is just a 2x2. But if I needed a 2x3, I can change these blocks to be exactly the dimension I need. You can notice I have two cubes. They're labeled box here, and they're the same object, but they look different. This gray hashing means it's actually a hole or a void. So if you were trying to put a window or just punch a hole through your design, you could use these to do that. So I'm thinking a door. Because we're making a fairy door, I really like project-based learning. I want to show and learn in a way where I'm actually using the tools, not just talking about what they do, but showing you how they're actually used. So if a door has some basic shapes, but you can add embellishments to make it fancier and use more specific tools. So there is no rectangle, but of course we can grab our box, and to grab it, I'm just left clicking, holding it down, and I'm going to drop it in the middle of my work plane. Now, these options here, so I could make this an actually a hole or a void, the same as I can make it solid. Always remember that the solid colors means a solid object. But I'm going to hit this up arrow just because I don't need all of these tools at the moment. I just want my workspace to be a bit cleaner. So, you might be familiar with these type of white boxes if you've maybe used images in a word processor or something like that. It lets you resize. So what I'm doing is I'm hovering my mouse over until it turns red. I'm clicking on it just so my dimensions don't disappear. And right now we see 20, so that's 20 millimeters, so 2 centimeters. It's a small door, but I want my door to be a bit larger than that. I'm going to click in 50, and it's going to automatically make that big. I could drag these marks, but it's just a little easier, I find, to just type in the number. Now I want my door to be twice as tall, so I'm going to put 100 for 10 centimeters. And there we are, starting to look like a door, but a very thick door. And this tip, I can only say it came from just experience. I find that if anything is less than 2 millimeters thick, it gets a bit tricky to print. So I don't like to go less than 2 millimeters of thickness. So I'm going to change at 20 just to a 2. So 2 millimeters thick. There is our basic door frame. We're doing great. Now, I'm going to show a complete version of what I'm recreating, this red door here, and I have a window. And I think it's a nice added element to the door. It gives it a bit of a design. So let's find something that's going to give us that oval, on that rounded shape on the top and flat on the bottom. And this round roof is what I'm looking for. But it is orientated not the way I want. So I'm going to move my work plane. Again, I'm right clicking and just hovering it around. And these arrows here are what I'm looking for. I can tilt this to the degree that I want. So I'm going to go 90 degrees. And oh, now it's not facing the right way. So I want to turn this all the way around. So 180. And there we go. And right now you can see it's going below my work plane. I'm not going to be too worried about that right now, especially because this is going to be a window. I'm going to make it into a hole anyways. So I'm going to left click on it and just drag it to where I want it to be. And about there looks good. Oh, now it's floating up in the air. Well, this is a good time to show you how to get that back onto your work plane. This little cone that turns red when I hover over it, this lifts things higher or lower. So when you're stacking or moving one thing on top of each other, this is how you would do that. Right now, I don't really want my window to be in the middle of the air. I want it to be through my door. So I'm going to click on this arrow and move it down. And that number that's right now at 12, you'll see it decrease as I get right down onto the work plane. So 0 would be sitting right on the work plane. +1 would be above and -1 would be below. All right, so we can see it sitting there. Now I'm going to try to move it. Another way of moving, instead of a mouse, I can use my arrow keys, and I'm just tapping it up and down to be about where I want it to be. And right now that looks about right. I'm thinking I want about 1 centimeter on either side. So our overall length is 5 minus 2. So I'm going to make this a width of 3 centimeters or 30 millimeters. All right. Now it's looking long enough, but it's a little short. So I'm going to make it just a bit taller, and here I can just grab my arrow and move it up. And if I'm worried that I might have made it longer, I can click on there and it still says 30. Now let's see if I've just used my eye to align this, but really I want it to be perfectly centered. I don't have to just rely on my eye for that. I'm going to select both items. To do that, I'm just going to click on somewhere on the blue work plane where I don't have anything. I'm going to left click, hold it down, and my selection tool is going to drag over the two options that I want. I know I have both selected because they're both a bit grayed out, but also when it says shapes, it has two, so I've selected two shapes. Up above the two is a tool that looks like a square and a circle joined together, and that's your grouping tool. So I'm going to group, getting ahead of myself. I don't want to group it just yet because I don't think it's aligned. I want to align it first. So now I have all these nodes that I can click on. And, I must have just gotten lucky. This node is grayed out because it is already centered down the middle. Say for what reason I wanted my window to be in the middle of my door. If I just hover my mouse over there, it gives me a bit of a preview of what that would look like. For me, that's not quite what I want. I just happen to get lucky and it's already centered. Again, any node that I hover over, it gives you a bit of a preview where it's going to move the objects to, but I'm happy where it is. So to get out of this selection, I just click anywhere on my work plane that's empty. Now, my window, I don't want it to be a solid object. So the object I want to be a hole, which in this case is our blue arc, I'm going to click on it. My shape tool comes up, and instead of a solid, I want it to make it a hole. And there we are. But it doesn't quite look like a hole yet. So what I'm going to do is back to that one that I kind of got ahead of myself with. I'm going to again select both items. So I'm left clicking, dragging that selection tool over both. And now I'm going to this grouping, which is a bit of a square and a circle together. I'll click on that. And if I wait a minute, there we are. It is now one object. So if I move my door, my window moves with it. It's not two different things. There we are. So we're starting to get a door feel here. Now, I like the look of having a bit of recessed panels in the door. It just makes it feel more like a front door versus a work door or something we'd see at a business. So I'm going to go back up to our box. I'm going to click and drag it to our work plane. And again, we know it's going to be a hole because it's transparent and it's got that gray hashing to it. So I'm going to make it, let's see. This is just about, art has a lot of math in it, but I'm just going to use just kind of what looks right at the moment, just to see what I like the look of. I like that. So that to me looks like it'll be nice. Now I don't want that to be right through my door like a window. I want it just to be a bit of a, my computer wants to go to sleep on me here. I want it to be a bit just inside the door. So my door itself, remember, is 2 millimeters thick. So maybe I want to recess it to be 1.75. So it's just going to be a bit impressed into the door. Now, I like the size of this. I don't have to recreate it, which is wonderful. I'm just going to use my shortcuts, copy and paste, to duplicate it. So copy and paste. Control C and Control V. I'm just going to move it over to be beside one another like that. And looks good. Okay, so now I want some panels at the bottom. I'm going to paste another box and just use my arrow keys to move it down. And paste another box and move it over. There we go. Now to make sure that I have these two lined up, I'm going to select this one. I'm going to hold my shift down and select that, and I have 2. I'm going to hit align, and oh, they're not grayed out, so they're definitely not quite perfectly aligned. So I want to align against this line here, so I'm going to click that. And you can see that just a subtle shift, but it would make a big difference when you want things to be perfectly aligned. And I'll just shift those over. There we are. Our door is starting to really take shape. Now, if I move my door, which I'll do, my panels aren't going to move with it, and that's because they're not grouped yet. So my favorite button, probably in every program, is the undo button. That's the arrow up here, but also the Control Z function works just wonderfully as well. So now I want to group everything together, so when I move it, it all moves as one. So again, I left click my shaping select tool over everything. I now have 5 shapes connecting, and I'm going to hit group. Oh, I must have moved something because that is not what I wanted. So my favorite button, the undo, I'm going to have to see what these are raised to. I want them at 1.75. And this one to be 1.75. Now let's try that again. So I'm going to select everything. I have 5, group it, and there we go. That's what I was looking for. Some nice panels, a window, and now it's a door without a doorknob. So let's get started on that. I'm going to grab another block. Now if the colors start to be hard to see, you know, I have a red door and another red block, I can click on this color, red, and it's going to bring up a whole palette for me to just be able to see it easier. Does it mean it's going to print in purple? No. But it's just helping me when I'm designing differentiate one object from another. So I want to make this panel a bit thin. I'm going to move it with my arrow keys. Now, when I move my arrow keys, you can see there's quite a lot of movement, which makes it sometimes difficult for that little fine detail of where you want your object to be. But not to worry, down here at the bottom, right now whenever I move my arrow keys, the snap grid is moving it 1 millimeter left, right, up, down. Doesn't sound like much, but when you're only dealing with something small, it can be. So I'm going to choose 0.25 millimeters. And it's going to move it just, you can see, a lot more slowly and with more detail. So I'm going to move it over just a little bit. And now that block, I like the size of it. This is going to be what our door handle is on top of, but I don't need it so thick. So I'm going to do my height. Now 2 centimeters is our door. So I'm going to go 2.25. Let's see what that looks like. It's definitely, if I zoom in, and I'm just using my mouse wheel to zoom in, there's a lift, but it's not maybe enough. Maybe I'll do a little bit more. So 2.5. There, I like the look of that. And I'm happy with it not aligning right to that door, or to the door wall, sorry. If you like to do that, awesome. Now a door handle. I'm gonna look through my basic shapes and find, oh, my sphere's right there. I'm going to left click on it and drop it into, and that door handle's just a bit big. So I'm going to change the dimensions again just by clicking on one of these corners, and I'm going to guesstimate at 5. Now I just need to do it for each of these measurements, and there we have a smaller sphere. And if I move it into my door, the size I'm happy with, but we do need to lift it into place. Let me get a good angle on that. So I'm going to lift this, and I'm not going to lift it right so it is lined up, because that's right at 2.75, but again, this is just experience. It's going to have a hard time being 3D printed and adhering without much surface area touching. So I'm going to click on my red arrow and pull it down so it's just a bit embedded into the rest of our print, and it will have a much higher success. So there we go. It's starting to look very Alice in Wonderland-like to me. So I'm selecting my purple panel and my blue door handle. So there's two, and I want to align them so they are aligned in the center. So you can see that shadow, it's not much, but math will make this art look a lot better. All right, I'm happy with that. And I'm going to, before I accidentally start to move things, just like that, which I can hit undo with, I'm going to group everything. And then I'm going to teach you something that Mina taught me about art. It's something I never thought of before. So I'm going to group those together, and now a keyhole. This is what Mina taught me, that there's two types of keyholes. One that looks friendly and approachable, and the other one that kind of looks like a horror story keyhole, something that like you can imagine the bad guy looking through. So the type of door I like, I'm thinking fairies and light and fun. I want the Alice in Wonderland whimsical door hole, which is a circle with a triangle shape at the bottom. The horror one, so maybe Halloween coming up, spooky season, maybe you want that horror one. A horror one looks more like a circle with just a slit, like a triangular slit up and down. Sketch it out, it really does make a difference. So I want a circle. I don't really want a sphere. Let's find a circle. Cylinder. Wonderful. I'm going to click and drag that into place. But again, it's so big. Now I remember we changed our door handle to 5, and this probably should be smaller than the door handle, so I'll go 3. 3. And the height, because this is going to be a hole, doesn't really, I'm not going to change it. It actually makes it a little easier to see where everything is. All right, so I'm going to go down, and you know what? Just see if I can get that to be where I like it to be. There we go. I like that. And now I want that. Now TinkerCAD can be limiting. I want a triangle, and I'm thinking a triangle that has all 3 angles the same. And I'm not really finding it. But this roof, we can manipulate it to be what we want. So right now, just kind of like our window, it's not facing the way I like. So again, I'm looking for those arrows, and I'm just going to tilt it to be 90 degrees on its side. And now I just need to change these dimensions. So I want it a bit bigger than 3, so I'll go 4. And maybe I don't. I can change my mind. Maybe I don't want it to be all the same angle. Kind of like that shape. So I'm going to move it to line up with my will be keyhole cylinder. And again, I like to eyeball it, see if I can get it close to what I want. And then I'm just going to use my align tool. So I'm going to select my green shape. I'm going to hold down shift, and I need to zoom in. Click on my orange shape if I can. I know I haven't clicked on it yet because I don't see the number 2. There we go. I have 2 shapes, and I want to align them. Oh, and they are aligned center. Again, I'm just getting lucky with that. So I'm going to click off. I'm going to click back on my 2 shapes, and I want them both to be holes. And now let's group that with our door. Once we group it, we should actually have that punched right through. Oh, the top of my triangle, it's not quite what I wanted. Favor button, undo. I'm going to move it down a bit so it's not poking through. I guess the best tool for that would maybe be align. So align. And I want them just to align at the top but not poke through. And recenter it. There we go. Now I'm confident it should be that classic keyhole shape I'm looking for. Wonderful. So whimsical. Now, what else can we try to do here? Ooh, some little window panes to make this more classic. So I'm going to find that cylinder again, and I'm going to make it my kind of the smallest I like to go, which is 2 millimeters. Now I want, this is going to lay flat and kind of be at angles here. So let's move it over to our work plane. It gets a bit slow when you move it to just 0.25. I'm just going to move it back up to 1 just to, there we go, quicken the process. So I want this to lay flat, so I'm going to turn that to 90. There we are. For right now, we're going to tilt it in a bit. And let me see if I have it. It's a good size. It's going to go top to bottom. And again, it's going to be part of our door, so even if it goes a bit beyond that, it's fine. So I'm going to first align it to the center because I want it to go from the center and out. So align and center. There we go. Oh. I'm going to have to hurry. My computer wants to just go to sleep. So now I want it to turn 45 degrees. So 45. There we are. And I'm just going to shuffle it over. Now I want to copy it and paste it. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put it right over top of that one. And I'm going to go -45. Oh, I'm going to have to do it one more time because that just brought it back to being parallel. -45. Now I'm just going to bring it so the bottoms match together. Line. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Not the node. Oh, Control Z. There we are. I'm going to group those two, and then I'm going to align it with the door in the center. And there we are. Now I can kind of see the tails of them poking out a bit, so I might just need to make that a bit flatter, more embedded. So instead of 2, I'll go 1.75. Kind of breaking my own rule, but we'll see if it works. And there we are. I like the look of that. So I'm going to group it so when I move one, it all moves together. And there we are. There's your very own fairy door. Now there's many other tools in TinkerCAD. You can change things by, as I was doing 45 degrees, you can type in 45% to make it 45% of the original size. I really encourage you to play around and poke at things. So the last thing we'll do before I let you go is export this. So if you want to save it as a file to 3D print, let's do that and then we'll call it a day. So export. Up here, now there's a few different options to save it as. An object file is a 3D file that you can maybe send to someone and they can continue to manipulate and change things. STL, you can still do that, but it's more of a finished product. And an SVG is, a few of our machines are Cricut, as well as soon to be in use, our laser cutter will also use SVG. So let's go STL. Because we already have a file name, it should come up as Veridor 2.0 and save. So there we go, start to finish, how to make your own fairy door in TinkerCAD. Thanks for joining me, and if you have any questions, feel free to message the library, or you can comment down below maybe other questions or things you maybe hope to see. Thanks for joining me. Bye!